Hey YouTube, so today we're going to go ahead and do a drive of the 2023 Mazda CX-50. What's really funny is I've been wanting the car in white. Now granted, I'm not mad that I got it in black. I think it looks excellent. But literally, where was this last week or 2 weeks ago when I wanted to get one? So in this case, no worries. I actually just came to get my white slip to go ahead and register this car. And guess who I see? It's my 2020 Hyundai Tucson. Well, it was mine. Now it's no longer mine anymore. But there she is. They got her ready to sell and she's looking good. So in this case, happy to see that the car made it through PDI, even though I didn't think it wouldn't. Well, actually PDI is for new cars. But in this instance, there she is. She got inspected and she's ready to sell. So hope that she treats the new family well, or whoever purchases her. But we are now in our black Mazda CX-50. Her name is Ventress. So I wanted to go ahead and do a driving impression of this vehicle because I haven't gotten to do it yet. I'm so sorry. I've been working around 60 to 70 hours a week and my brain has been fried. So in this case, let's talk about the Mazda. How is this car? One thing I will say, I really like it, and it feels heavy, which is something that some people have been complaining about, but I don't have a complaint in my opinion regarding that. In this respect, a heavier feel to a vehicle is something I prefer. The steering, I'll admit, is a little heavier than I anticipated, but it's not bothersome and it's not hard to control the car by any means. It just feels very planted, and honestly, it does feel engaged with the road. It doesn't feel like I'm floating on the road. It feels like I'm actually working with the road. The engine's a little bit louder than that of the Tucson. In this case, it intrudes a little bit more into the cabin, but it doesn't bother me by any means. And in this case, the visibility in this vehicle is actually pretty easy to navigate. The blind spot is actually really nice because the door has the mirror on it rather than on the little corner of the A-pillar. That really helps to minimize some of the blind spots, and that's why Subaru and Toyota have also been doing this. So in this instance, let's go ahead and get on the highway and let's show you how the gearbox works. It's not a fast vehicle. This is the 2.5 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine. It puts out 187 horsepower and it is mated to the 6-speed. The 6-speed, I will say, shifts really nicely. Initially, I didn't really want another 6-speed because honestly, I wanted more gears. I wanted to be able to have more speeds to work with. But the 6-speed in this is actually sufficient. It doesn't feel like you need more power, although at times the way the gears are spaced, it'll unnecessarily downshift. But in this instance, it's not bad whatsoever. It's a pleasant vehicle to drive. The seats to me are comfortable, although they are a little stiffer. But with that, one thing I will say is I love the heated feature. It definitely burns your back right off. Cabin noise is a little louder. In this respect, it's not a quiet car on the inside. I noticed there to be a lot more cabin intrusion with wind noise and additionally tire noise, but to me that's not unbearable. I came from a Honda Accord as my first car, so I mean, I always say that because in this case, for those of you guys that know what Honda Accords are like in the late 90s, early thousands, you just know. It holds speed really well. This thing I really do like in terms of how it holds speed because the Hyundai definitely felt a little bit more fatigued on the highway. Now granted, the gearing on the Hyundai was less aggressive, so right now it would actually be down in 5th gear. I'm able to maintain 75 to 80 miles an hour going uphill in 6th gear. So The Mazda, even though the power ratings are the same, the behaviors of both vehicles are very different. This is a much more aggressive feeling car and looking car for that matter. But in this case, with the way the gearbox shifts, the way the engine behaves, and how the torque is distributed, this feels a lot sportier. Additionally, with that, the 6-speed transmission, it wants to keep the torque converter locked up. So in that respect, it locks it up very quickly, and it's almost like it doesn't let it go. I don't notice any fluctuation in RPM like I did with the Tucson. Especially in second gear, the Tucson wanted to unlock the torque converter unnecessarily, which in this case, it almost felt like the transmission was slipping. Even though there was nothing wrong with it, that's just the programming. But in this instance, it behaves very well. It goes a little smoothly over bumps, but it's a little bit rough depending on what type of bump you hit. So that's just something to be aware of. This is not the smoothest of vehicles on the road when it comes to bumpy roads. But when it comes to roads like this, it handles and it rides very nicely. So as long as you get a smooth road, this is going to be a joy to drive. But in this respect, I still like the car anyway, and I have no issues with going over bumpy roads on this. And I love the fact that the fuel economy on this is excellent. I mean, in this case, compared with the Hyundai, I just got 320 miles to from full to below 1/4 tank. In the Hyundai, it would have taken only about 220 miles before that actually happened. So this does a lot better on fuel. And this is all-wheel drive, while the Hyundai was front-wheel drive. Go figure. Interior-wise, it feels very elegant in here. With that, the infotainment system, as I'm getting used to it, it's getting much easier. It's not touchscreen, so there are times where I'm just kind of like, dude, WTF? Like, I kind of wish it was. But it doesn't bother me by any means. It's just more or less, it's just taking... it takes some getting used to. The steering wheel vibrates when you go out of your lane, and so that is kind of interesting. But with that, it's not, you know, something that's super intrusive. It's just like, hey, pay attention. But yeah, as you can see, not a bad ride whatsoever. With that, it's a little bit loud on the inside sometimes with the wind, depending on how hard it's blowing, and it's been blowing pretty hard in Vegas. But in this case, depending on the type of road you're on, you can have some cabin intrusion. There is a slight hum from the engine, but it's actually more or less, to me, a little bit calming. It's like, oh, it's just running. It's fine. It's doing its thing. So with that, that's the only thing I've noticed in this case, but it's not something that like is super intrusive. You wouldn't be noticing it if you weren't paying attention. I live next to the Nature's Own bread factory. So it smells like bread over here. Adaptive cruise on this works really nicely. I'm not using it right now, but in this case, it doesn't slam on the brakes like you would get in something like a Honda. I will say, however, it's not as good as the Hyundais, and it's not as good as the Subarus. I find those to be a little bit better in terms of how they manage the stop and go. This one kind of wants to pump the brakes to smooth it out, but the software on it kind of has it slam the brakes a little bit. Not as bad as some cars, but I can't really say slam, just nudge the brakes harder than I would like, and it doesn't stop linearly. It slows down, and then it lets off the brake a little bit, and then lets back onto the brake to give you more of a smooth stop. But it ends up kind of just, you know, kind of rocking you back and forth a little bit. So it's one of those where they could work on it, but in this case, I mean, you know, with that, it has adaptive cruise control with stop and go, and honestly, that doesn't bother me one bit, especially when I'm very tired. You don't have a stop sign, go. Lord have mercy. Washington, you need to get it together. Do not be driving in front of people like that. Oh, he's going to the bar. Okay, there we go. I really like the way the transmission shifts. It is so crisp. It kind of reminds me of an old 90s Honda. Now, it is firm. It doesn't shift hard, but it's firm. And with that, just the way it sounds, it's a very crisp and smooth shift, and it's not something that kind of drags itself out. So I do like that. It doesn't feel like a slush box. So that's definitely something I'm really fond of with this vehicle. Go ahead and do one more acceleration here. Engine's still breaking in, so I'm not going to be rough on it, but let's go ahead and do another shift point, and just you'll be able to see how the vehicle behaves on acceleration. I really love how quick the shifts are. I mean, granted, coming from a Hyundai, now the shifts on those are usually pretty slow. They've gotten better, but I will say the shifts on this are just so much better. Despite it still being, again, a 6-speed. It's not something that I initially wanted, but this just, like, I just absolutely fell in love with this vehicle. Alrighty. So we have arrived at my residence here. I have been up for approximately 30 hours, so I will let you guys go. But with that, thank you for taking a drive with me in the 2023 Mazda CX-50 Preferred Plus. With that, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to like, subscribe, and comment, and we'll regroup soon. Have a good one, folks.